Hello, this is Greg, aka Soulblazer, co-host of the Super NES podcast, and you're listening to the 1700 Game by Game podcast with your awesome host, Phil, the No Swear Gamer. You know what, Phil doesn't need any help doing this podcast, he's doing a great job. Hey, Mr. Robot Announcer, how'd you like to work for me on my podcast? You know, a system that actually has great controllers and good music. I'll pay you copies of Mario and Zelda games, games people actually like to remember today.
What? Work for Greg. Mr. Mode 7. The guy who likes that Mr. Dig Dug wannabe game. Does not compute. Error. Oh no. Blue screen. Emergency shutdown.
Voice? Voice, are you okay? What happened? Greg, what did you do to Voice? Voice, are you all right? Okay, well, hey, I'm going to check on you in just a second. Let me do the intro. You don't worry about it. I'll take care of it this time. On today's episode of the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast, we will be covering FG 2002 Water Ski and FG 2003 Tank Command, the Froggo games for the 7800. Voice? Hey guys, welcome to episode 11 of the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast. My name is Phil and I'm your host. And in just a little while, I'm going to tell you about the contest I'm going to do where Ed from Edladdin.com is going to give away a Super Twin 78 controller. You're going to want to hang on and definitely check that out. It's an amazing controller and I'll tell you more about that in just a few minutes. Now, first of all, do you remember when Ferg got me in episode 7? He was able to sneak in saying that name of the game that shall not be named, that Dig Dug wannabe game. He actually snuck it in very, very slyly. Well, Ferg, I didn't forget. And guess what? I can't believe it. I thought he'd catch me, but I got him back in episode 101 of the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast. If you listen to the end where I do an audio submission, I snuck in a little back in the you-know-what action. And it was kind of sneaky. I was pretending to be upset at Greg from the SNES podcast. Greg, not really mad at you, but it made for a good story. And I came up with this crazy story, and it was all just to sneak in a little reference. So be sure to check that out in his latest episode. Now, before I tell you about the contest, I did want to go and kind of give you a history of what systems I had growing up, because Faro, in one of his emails on a recent episode, was kind of going through his history, and that kind of inspired me. So it all started with a Magnavox Odyssey 2 that my dad brought home. Now, I played an Odyssey 2 before at my uncle. He had one. It's not, and this wasn't his system. I thought it was for a while, but it wasn't. I don't even know how my dad got it. But when he brought it, this was at a time where you really couldn't find Odyssey games at Toys R Us or anywhere else. So I just got this used Odyssey 2 with a stack of games, and I just had a great time with it. I remember playing Pickaxe Pete. That was my favorite game. Casey Munchkin, the Pac-Man ripoff that got into legal trouble. And I think Alien Invader Plus was the other one. It was a Space Invaders kind of ripoff, but it was a fun game. And there's some other games too, I remember. And that might have been, I don't know, maybe 84, 85, somewhere around there. 1987 is when I believe I got my Atari 7800 system. And of course, we're going through all the games on this episode. And, I'm telling you my favorites as we go on. Then I think it was at the end of 1990, I got a Sega Genesis. And this was the system I probably would hold on to the longest. Part of it was because later on I would get a Sega CD and a power-based converter. Now, some of my favorite games that I got originally with the Sega Genesis was like Altered Beast and James Buster Douglas Boxing, because I got those for free. It was a promotion where if you bought the system with Altered Beast, they'd send you a sport game, and I picked James Buster Douglas Boxing. Wasn't that great, but I did enjoy other games like the NHL series and Streets of Rage 2 and Aerobiz. I actually enjoyed Aerobiz a lot, and had a lot of fun with the power-based converter, playing Wonder Boy 3 and Alex Kidd in Shinobi World and the original Shinobi, and of course with the Sega CD playing games like Sewer Shark and The Secret of Monkey Island. I had a lot of fun with those. And later on in the 90s, my Toys R Us was clearancing out TurboGrafx 16 systems. I think it was like $40, and I bought one with a couple games like New Adventure Island and Sidearms and Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu. That was before he was a big star. I had that for a very little time. I didn't sell the Genesis at that point, but later on I would sell the Genesis and the CD and the Power Base, a huge collection. And it wouldn't be until 1996 when I'd buy a Sega Saturn. I was a big Sega fan. And I wonder how many people, once Atari kind of fell off the map, went to Sega or Nintendo. For a while I went to Sega. So I got a Sega Saturn, and this came with a 3-pack, Virtual Fighter 2, Virtual Cop 1, and Daytona USA. And another game I bought early on that I really enjoyed was Street Fighter Alpha 2, which might be my favorite Street Fighter game of all time. Now, when I was in college, I started to go through a retro phase. I bought my first Nintendo from Funkoland. If you don't know what Funkoland is, it's a used game shop. It's basically GameStop before GameStop, but GameStop would end up buying them out and, making everything we really liked about Funkoland. They took that all away and they made it a store that we didn't like so much. But I was able to get a bunch of the Mega Man games, the Turtle games, the Mario games, the Castlevania games for fairly cheap. And also during this time, this is when eBay was starting to kick up. I would find another Atari 7800 on eBay and bought a bunch of 2600 and 7800 games, including from O'Shea's. And then later on, I'd find a Super Nintendo at a garage sale for $5 with, I want to say, SimCity and Super Mario World, which is a great way to start a Super Nintendo collection. I got one of those. And then I would end up, the next new system I bought would be a Nintendo GameCube. So I went from Atari to Sega. And then when Sega dropped out of the console making business, I never got a Dreamcast. That just didn't last long enough. I got a GameCube. And then eventually I bought a used Wii. And as far as the home systems go, that's kind of my history with those. Okay, so I know you guys want to know how you can win an Edladdin Super Twin 78 controller. If you don't know what that is, it's an arcade quality dual stick controller. It has 2 different cords, one for the one player, one for the second player. And it's designed with Robotron 2084 in mind. And what I'm really hoping is that the winner of this contest will be a 7800 fan and a Robotron fan. That would just make my day. This is a high quality controller on Edladdin.com. It currently retails for $149. And it is well built. He is not making a ton of money off of these because he's using high quality parts. So this is a solid controller. So here's what I'm going to do for the contest. When I got it in the mail, before I hooked it up, I played a game of Robotron 2084 with the standard Pro Line controller that came packed with the American version of the 7800. I played a game of Robotron on the intermediate level. And then as soon as I was done with that game, I plugged in the twin stick and played another game on the intermediate level. And this probably shouldn't surprise anybody, but I did a lot better using a twin stick than I did using a single Pro Line controller. So for the contest will be for the winner, the eligible winner, I'll get to that in a second, who can tell me by how many points I improved my score going from the Pro Line to the Super Twin. So for instance, let's just pretend I scored 10 points using the Pro Line and 15 points using the Super Twin. And, those are extremely low numbers just for an existence. The difference would be 5 points. I improved my score by 5 points. So I want to know how many points I improved my score going from the Pro Line to the Super Twin. I played the games back to back. Both were on intermediate. And I'm not, the biggest Robotron player in the world. But here's what you do. You can send your entry to Atari 7800 podcast at AOL.com. Now, this is going to be open to residents of the United States and Canada. Ed has been kind enough that he's going to ship it either to anywhere in the U.S. or Canada. So I thought that was really cool of him because a lot of these contests are just for the U.S. So I my apologies to any of my listeners overseas or out of those areas, but this is just going to be for the U.S. and Canada for shipping purposes. So if you're in the United States or Canada, or you have a shipping address in there that's, a legitimate shipping address, you can send your guess in. And what I will do is next week, I'm not going to announce the winner, not next week, but next episode. In episode 12, I will give another hint because I want to reward people who listen to the show. So in episode 12, I'll give you a hint. And in episode 13, I will announce the winner. Now, your entry will have to be mailed to me, directly to me, by July 3rd at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you have to email your entry by July 3rd, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I have time to get it ready to announce you as a winner in episode 13. And there's only one entry allowed per person. So if you send in multiple entries, I'm sorry, or I'm going to have to disqualify you. I don't want to have to do that. One entry per person. And here's what I'm going to do. If two people guess the same, amount, and they're both tied as the winners, the closest to the amount. By the way, I'm not doing Price's Right rules. You can go over, and I'm not going to disqualify you. So it's just whoever's the closest to the number that I improved my score by. So the first person if there's a tie, the first person who emailed me, whichever one my email says I got first, will be declared the winner. But in episode 11, I'm going to give you a hint. I'm going to give you a hint to help kind of narrow down a little bit, kind of how many points I may have improved my score by. So that's how it's going to work out. So if you want to email it right away, you can, but you'll miss out on the hint. But I will give a little hint in episode 11, then in episode 12, I'll give the hint, and in episode 13, I'll announce a winner. Thanks immensely to Edladdin for donating this joystick to give away. This is the one that I used. This is the personal one I have right now in my home, and I will be the one who's mailing it out to you. Ed's providing the postage, so extra kudos to him. Go to edladdin.com right now and buy something, especially a Seagull 78 adapter. That's the adapter that allows you to use a Sega Genesis controller with 2-button games on the Atari 7800. If you own a 7800, this is a must. You definitely got to get one of these. And he also has some high quality joysticks if you're in that market. Some premium stuff, and they're really, really solid. I have the Supreme the 4-8, it's a joystick that switches between becoming a 4-directional joystick and an 8-directional joystick. And that 4-directional ability makes it really great for games like Ms. Pac-Man. But I'm telling you what, this Super Twin 78 is solid, especially if you are a fan of Robotron. Now, you can cram 2 people around it. It is the joystick is close together. You can see pictures of it on my Facebook page. And if you want to use one side or the other, you can. It doesn't matter which handed you are. You're going to have to use your left hand for the joystick and your hand for the buttons. But if you're not using it for Robotron, you can, if you want to use the other side, you can actually plug the player 2 side into the first port and use it if that's how you want to do it. So, there is a little bit of flexibility with how to use the joystick, but it's a solid joystick. And I'm sure you are going to enjoy it, whoever gets it. So remember, tell me how many points I improved my score on Robotron 2084. Send it to Atari7800podcast@AOL.com. If you put it anywhere else, post on Facebook or something like that, it's not going to count. You have to email it to me by July 3rd, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I look forward to seeing what you guys think. And I really hope this goes to a big 7800 fan. So thanks again, Ed. That's just an amazing prize. Okay, let's go on to today's episode, and let's talk about Froggo to begin with. Okay, finding information on Froggo was really, really difficult. Basically, everything I found could be taken as a rumor. So take everything I said kind of in the rumor mill category. I couldn't find anything concrete. Now, Froggo kind of started up in 1987. Now, one rumor I heard was that they were a joystick manufacturer and they wanted the Atari 2600 and 7800 to do well in the late 80s to sell more joysticks. So they began to make games for them and support them that way. That's one of the rumors that I have a hard time believing. I don't know because I haven't found any Froggo joysticks. So I think that one kind of falls by the wayside. Now, initially, they came out with 6 games on the 2600. Now, the interesting thing about all the games for the 2600 is that they're all basically games that were already released or at least already made, and they just brought them out. Now, they started coming out in 1987. So this was at the same time when you could buy Nintendo. So this is a very late third-party publisher on the Atari. Now, the interesting thing about these games is that some people think that they were pirated and other people say that they were licensed. So let me go over the list of 2600 games really quickly. You had a game called Cruise Missile, which was called Exocet before. I think that was a Panda game. You had a game called Sea Hunt, which was previously known as Scuba Diver. I think that was also Panda. Then you have a game called Seahawk, and the name didn't change, but that was a Panda game. Then you have a game called Karate, considered one of the worst games of all time, by a company called Ultravision. Now, Ultravision never released this game, or if they did, it was very, very limited. So it wasn't really, it was kind of a game that they kind of picked out of the trash, if you will. They also came up with a game called Task Force, which was originally known as Gangster Alley, made by Spectravision, and then a game called Spider Droid, which was called Amadar, which was published by Parker Brothers originally. Now, when they changed these games, they usually made little changes to them. Some were more minor than others, like, you have Spider Droid where they changed the characters in Amadar. I did a review as a No Swear Gamer on YouTube where I did Task Force and Gangster Alley to show the difference. So it's basically the same game, but they changed some of the character graphics, so they made the characters look different. I think Seahawk was pretty much the same. Don't know much about the other games. So were they pirated or was it licensed? Well, I did read a report that they licensed these games, that they paid the companies, whoever owned the rights, to take the games and, remake them in their own image and send them out. And it makes sense to a degree because I have a hard time believing that they could release all these games that were previously made and not get in legal trouble. Especially with Parker Brothers over Amadar, because Parker Brothers, pretty big company. I have a hard time that they would turn the other cheek. So my guess is they found these games with very little value to the original holder, because most of these games were terrible to begin with. So they'd probably be grateful to get any money for it. Amadar is probably the sole one that may have cost the most. And, especially with Ultravision and Karate, where they weren't even planning to really make any money, they'd probably be happy to get any money off of it at all. So yeah, that's what they did with the 2600. But when it came to the 7800, they actually made original titles, just the two that we're covering today. Now, one thing I heard was that Froggo was basically one guy, basically like a home brewer today. When you think about it, there's a lot of home brewers out there who will take a game that was previously made, like they did with their 2600 games, and just adjust it a little bit and send it out. And that's kind of what Froggo did. And so there's a theory out there that this was just one gentleman. And the same theory goes in line that he was treated poorly by the Trammels, that he went to the office one day and they purposely made him wait in the lobby for like 6 hours just to have him come in and tell him that, what are you doing making games for our systems? You shouldn't be doing that. It's hard for me to imagine that anyone would say, don't make games for my system, especially if they were going to, help to try and add to the library. But it's possible that's the truth. I don't know. It also kind of doesn't make sense because Froggo did have some ads in the Atari magazine. So if you're not going to support the company, why would you allow them to advertise in your magazine? And why would you cover some of the games in their magazine? I'll get to that later on. There was also another rumor. Someone said that they were featured on 60 Minutes and that basically the owner skipped town one night and never paid his employees their final paycheck. Again, this is just a rumor. I couldn't find anything about this being on 60 Minutes. It's possible this was another company, but it's possible it was Froggo as well. But anyways, I can't find any information. So if anybody has any more information on Froggo, like who was the head person exactly and any more details on it, beyond just the kind of hearsay that I didn't cover, I'd be interested to hear that. So that's kind of the company information. Let's go on to today's games, Water Ski and Tank Command. Water Ski is an original skiing game released in 1988, and off the top of my head, I can't think of any other exclusive water skiing game on a home system. I'm sure there are others. I know there's a lot of snow skiing, but water skiing was one of those sports that didn't really get well represented on home systems. So anyways, it comes in your standard Froggo white box. If you don't know, Froggo games came in a white box. It reminds me a lot of like generic products at a grocery store. I think the boxes were roughly the same size as your typical Atari box off the top of my head. I do not have a water ski box or a Tank Command box. But the water ski box has a lot of blue on the cover. There's 2 shades of blue. You see a wave covering up the majority of the skier. You can see his pink ski, and it looks like some pink swimming trunks coming from the wave and an arm coming from the wave. But basically, you don't see much of the skier at all. But the word water ski is very, very big. And so is the 7800 number to let you know that this is for your 7800 system. On the back, it says, first of all, it says the Froggo Games Corporation, gives you the full name. Water ski. You are challenging the torturous Verona River and must complete the treacherous course in the shortest time possible without wiping out. You must make split-second decisions to increase or decrease boat speed while turning left and right according to the river flow to avoid obstacles such as piers, boats, buoys, and logs. Careful, don't crash because your water is infested with killer sharks and you will be just another delicious meal. You must manipulate the boat and skier correctly to jump the ramps for extra points or you will crash. Watch out for the banks and beaches. If you get too close, you will be wiped out. This is a world-class championship course that defies and dares you to one quick run. And then it gives you the address and so on and so forth. And there was one screenshot that is definitely not a screenshot. Looks like somebody drew this in Microsoft Paint. It is clearly not from the game. It shows the tail of a crocodile and his head popping out. And your boat almost looks waterlogged. It looks like there's water in your boat. You could see a couple pieces of sand, and your guy appears to be holding the ski rope with one hand, because that's what you do when there's alligators that are the size of your boats chasing you down. By the way, who has an obstacle course with sharks and alligators infesting the waters? That's just crazy. The manual is actually somewhat impressive. It's a little bit smaller than your typical Atari 7800 manual, but it's full color, including screenshots. They didn't skimp on the manuals as far as that go. It is an 8-page fold-out manual. There is no staples in this. The front of the manual is just the basically the same as the box art. And on the first page, it tells you how to set up your system, and it talks about scoring. Your score is displayed in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Running points. The faster you go through the course, the higher your score. Speed is of the essence. Ramps. Every ramp you jump earns you 10,000 points. Levels. Reaching the next level earns you 50,000 points. Extra boat and skier. You earn one for every 200,000 points you get. And then it says this, water ski. Dangers lurk around every bend of the treacherous Verona River, and you're taking it head on. With a hunger for fatal thrills, your team of bionic skiers get every chance to wipe out in shame or glory. Bionic? So they're like robotic or something? That's interesting. But you have a higher purpose. You know the daredevil's greatest challenge lies in cheating death, and the greatest victory is survival. So now you're a daredevil water skier. Race the clock and the scoreboard at perilous speed. The faster you get through the obstacle course, the more running points you accumulate. Defy death with gutsy flair, hitting every ramp, and watch your score rise. But be warned, very few cross the finish line and leave the Verona alive. It's outrageous, complex, deadly, and totally rad. And you'll still be learning the game after months of intense play. And then they show you what appears to be an actual screenshot of the game. So they actually put a screenshot there. You know, so far, I'm liking this manual more than just about every Atari manual. It looks like they actually put some effort into this. Levels. Water ski has 3 levels to vex and challenge you. You must earn the right to advance to the next level. The game begins at level 1, and if you're clever and agile enough, continues to level 2 and finally level 3. Once you reach level 2, you stay at the level until you lose your last boat/skier or advance to the final level. After a wipeout or crash, if you have skiers remaining, the next run starts at the beginning of the current level. For example, if your third skier makes it into level 2 and then gets chomped by a river shark, your fourth run starts at the beginning of level 2. So it always kicks you back to the beginning. Reaching the next level does not earn you an extra run, but the bonus of 50,000 points you will earn will help towards the next 200,000 points you need to get an extra run. Then it tells you about the levels. Level 1, obstacle slalom run. This is the first level with the greatest number of ramps and stationary objects. Jump as many ramps as you can to earn bonus points, or try to avoid everything and sneak through to level 2. Watch out for rocks, piers, tree stumps, out of control speedboats crossing your path, and hidden rocks near the unforgiving shoreline. You will get to know them well. Level 2, Shark and Alligator Main Course. This level is even more challenging than the first. Watch out for the buoys, rocks, and logs if you can. The waters of level 2 are infested with zigzagging, high hybrid river sharks, and huge alligators. They smell fresh meat and are on the move. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, sharks can go into freshwater rivers. At least some can. Level 3, high-speed Deathrun. The emphasis here is on speed, pure and simple. Crank it up and wind it out. For the high flyers among you, there are ramps and ever-present opportunities to smash into more obstacles. Cross the finish line and join the select few who have mastered the Verona. The level indicator is located at the bottom middle of your screen. Goals. Water ski has 2 goals: crossing the finish line at the end of level 3, which ends the game, and obtaining the highest possible score. So this is one of the few games you can actually defeat if you get all the way through level 3. The top score, located at the top right-hand corner of the screen, indicates the highest score since the machine was turned on. You have 4 runs to reach your goal before the game ends. The number of boats/skiers you have left are indicated on the lower left-hand side of the screen. Crash a boat or skier, and you lose that run. In addition to running up the highest possible score, you want to go as fast or go as far as you can with the best time possible. The elapsed time is located on the lower right-hand side of the screen. If you ever make it to level 3 with extra skiers, remember, the game ends when you cross the finish line. Some unscrupulous, heartless master water skiers have been known to sacrifice a skier or two just before crossing the line in order to maximize their point totals. Oh, wow. Interesting. Controls. You have separate controls for the speedboat and the skier. Be careful because the tow rope lifeline creates a complex interaction between the two, just like in real life. Every move the boat makes affects the speed and direction of the skier, and vice versa to a lesser degree. And often using both controls, there are cumulative effects. With a slight tap in one direction can send your skier hurtling to its doom. It takes weeks to master the simplest high-speed maneuvers at a terrific cost of life and limb, not to mention boat hardware. And even then, you may never see level 3 alive. I don't think I will. Speedboat. Moving the joystick left or right directs the boat. Moving the joystick forward steadily speeds up the boat. Backward steadily decreases the boat speed. Skier. Pressing the left joystick button moves the skier to the left. The right button moves the skier to the right. Skier can move independently of boat direction until the limits of the tow rope are reached. Holding button down increases skier movement faster and farther. You are speeding upstream. The Verona's current will cause you to drift and affect the interaction of the skier and the speedboat. Now, I'll say this. This is one of the most unique controlling games on the system. And it probably takes the best advantage of the ProLine controller. It's almost like the ProLine controller was made for this game. I'm not saying it controls great, but again, you use the joystick part to control your boat. So left or right and up to go faster. But you probably won't want to do this. This is a really tough game. And then the buttons move to the left or right with your skier. So you can actually make your boat go to the right while your skier goes to the left. And you can do that sometimes to, like, let's say there's a rock. Well, the boat can go to the right of the rock and the skier can go to the left. And I actually did that a couple times. And it's just really interesting how it uses the controller. It's very imaginative, but it works. It's not easy to control, but it does work. And it's kind of a shame that the 7800 didn't have more games that actually used the ProLine controller for what it was designed for. I think the ProLine controller would have done a really good job with pinball games as well, with the right and left flippers, with the way that moves. Now, of course, you can play this game, with like a Sega Genesis pad and what have you, but if you have a ProLine controller and you have this game, give it a try. It's such a unique experience. So I go on. Wipeouts. The skier will wipe out if he hits any object except a ramp. Jumping any ramp scores a bonus 10,000 points. The boat will crash if it hits any object on the screen. Boats will not survive hitting a ramp. If the boat or skier hits any terrain, a crash will occur and the run will be over. Caution, don't get too fancy around the shoreline because the hidden rocks and sandbars. So yeah, you have to be really careful with this game because you're controlling 2 objects and you lose a guy or a try or a run if either one of those objects sinks, and it's very difficult to control both at the same time. It's kind of like doing the whole walking and chewing gum and patting your belly and patting your head at the same time kind of deal. Hints. Sometimes it's necessary to speed up to avoid obstacles. Look ahead as much as possible to anticipate dangers. Remember, when you jump the ramp, the skier cannot change direction while in air. Also, the skier can jump over obstacles if he hits the ramp fast enough. On some obstacles, the speedboat can pass on one side and the skier passes on the other. But keep in mind, show-offs die. That's words to live by. Show-offs die. Game over. The game is over when you've used up all 4 boat/skier runs or when you cross the finish line, that would be for the third level. Restart the game by pressing the left joystick buttons. Final words. It is possible to hit every ramp to score 1,000,000 points, to live to the very ripe old age without seeing level 3. Adjusting color. Remember when you had to adjust colors on TVs? Since colors vary slightly from TV to TV, here are some guidelines to adjusting the color for water ski. Water is medium blue, boat is red, skier is light tan or off white. And there you go. That is the manual for water ski. Now the water ski cartridge, both the Froggo cartridges, they look very similar to Activision cartridges, except in the back they have like a grip that's on the top portion that wraps around the back of the cartridge, and on the back also where the prongs are, where the plastic prongs are. For whatever reason, they cut out that little bottom of the cartridge, like a little chunk has been taken out, so you can see the prongs through the cartridge. The labels on Froggo games wrap around to the top like old Activision games on the Atari 2600. They're basically the box art. They're very white, and the same as the case for water ski with the box art, and it says 7800 in the top corner. And when it wraps around to the top, so like if your games are sitting and you can only see the tops of the games, all you can see is Froggo games in blue. Now, let me tell you how I got my copy of this game. And I got it recently within the last year. Did not have this growing up. I do recall seeing it in like Meijer, I think, maybe Toys R Us. I don't know. But when you look at the top of the game, all it says is Froggo games in blue. Well, I was looking at a lot on eBay, and sometimes when people put a lot of Atari games, they'll just put, Atari games in the title, or a lot of Atari games, and they won't in the description or anywhere in the auction tell you what the name of the games are. They'll just be like, hey, here's 20 Atari games, and they'll show you, and you have to look at the picture to figure out what the titles are. Well, I was looking at this group, and I think it was like 40 games in like a shoebox style container, and all you could see was the top of them, and I saw the blue Froggo, and I was like, I think that's water ski. I bet you that's water ski. Now, it was mostly 2600 games, but there were a couple 7800 games mixed in. So I was like, I think that's water ski. So I put a bid, and I didn't pay too much, and I won the whole auction. And when it came in, lo and behold, it was water ski. So that was my eagle eye at work. I just kind of stumbled upon it and took a gamble, and it paid off. The graphics on this game, they can hurt your eyes. Or at least they hurt mine on my TV a little bit. It's just something about the colors. I don't know. It's just off. I mean, the boat kind of looks good, but everything else is just kind of meh. I mean, you can tell what everything is, but you could have done better. And musically speaking, there's a little ditty that plays at the beginning that just kind of keeps going. It almost reminds me of the Ball Blazer music, but it's not as good. It's interesting, I guess you could say. And then you just got some generic sound effects. Rarity-wise, Atari Age gives this a 4 out of 10, and Digital Press gives it a 6, making it one of the rarest games that Digital Press ranks. Okay, over on eBay, actually, you know what? I'm going to tell you all the auctions I saw on eBay. This is completed listings, and I will tell you every one of them because there wasn't a lot. So a manual by itself sold for $20. A copy of the game by itself, a loose copy, sold for $24. So if you decide to buy both of those together, it would have been like $44. There were some people who were trying to sell it for around $40. They haven't sold it yet. I think there's a copy right now up for $40. Someone for almost $60 sold the manual and the cartridge together. Another person sold the manual and the cartridge together for $66.66. There was a box copy that was sold with Battlezone for the 2600, Xevious, Robotron Galaga, and Miss Pac-Man for the 7800. So 6 games for $86.11. So that person got a pretty good deal. And then there was a brand new copy that sold for $95. So no complete copies other than what was in that one lot. So yeah, the game tends, so I would say typically you can expect to pay between $20 and $30 for a loose cartridge. But it's rare. It doesn't show up that often. But yeah, I was lucky to get mine because I don't know, for that lot of games I probably spent like $40. And that was pretty good. Maybe a little more. I can't quite remember. Okay, let's see. The average Atari Age external review, there's two of them on it, two external reviews on Atari Age for 64% average. The high one was 78% and the low was 50%. So kind of a big gap there. And for the high score club, it says the water ski, the level 1 champion was Skosh, who got 1,609,700 points. So that is water ski. Enough with that. Let's move on to Tank Command. Tank Command was also released in 1988, but I don't recall ever seeing it on store shelves, which would make sense because it is the rare of the two. This time, instead of the kind of the blue kind of coloring, this time we have more of a brown coloring on the box art with a little bit of Commando green thrown in. So basically the box just says Tank Command and pretty big characters, not as big as the water ski box. And then you have this brown and black tank in the front that just basically looks like a drawing, doesn't look like a real tank. And on the back, let's see, it says Tank Command. The final offensive is on, and it is a maximum effort. You are the commander of an elite tank division equipped with the newest XT-87 heavy tanks, with orders to lead the spearhead through the enemy's heaviest fortified section and drive straight through to their capital. The enemy is waiting for you with everything they have got. The terrain is covered with anti-tank pillboxes, heavy artillery, and tank traps. Watch out, they have squads of suicidal law, lightweight anti-tank weapons, equipped men waiting in ambush, and surprise air attacks. You have 3 spare battalions to get resupplied with a fresh battalion only after you reach bonus points. You must successfully penetrate areas of several fortifications and various levels of difficulty to achieve your primary target. The battle is dependent on your quick wits, planning, and accurate firepower by selecting the various energy fire levels. Good luck. And it shows another screenshot that looks more like a screenshot, but I don't think it is. So one thing I'll say about the backs of the boxes, they go in more detail than any box I can remember on the Atari 7800. And just like water ski, you have another 8-page fold out full color manual, which as I said, I think they look pretty good and they do a pretty good job really putting details into it. Some of the manuals I've read recently were really skimpy, and these ones don't really skimp. All right, so here we go. Displays. High score indicates the highest score since the game was first turned on. Score indicates the current score of the player while the game is in progress. Ammo is how many shells the player has left. Fuel indicates fuel level. At E, it's empty. The tank loses maneuverability. Tanks, the number of reinforcement tanks remaining. Level indicates the current level. Level 1 is the easiest, and the game always begins here. Level 2 is significantly more difficult, and the action is more lethal and frenzied. Only the best can survive level 3. Now, I don't know if you notice a pattern, but this game, just like Water Ski, has 3 levels, and I think whoever made Water Ski used the same engine for Tank Command, because they're both basically almost a similar type game. You could see how they're similar because they're both 3 long levels long. You start at the bottom. It's a scrolling game. You scroll your way up to the top. And I basically think that this is almost a reskinned Water Ski in a sense. Of course, there's a little bit difference in how you play the game, but I think they use the same engine for both games. Scoring. Your score is displayed in the upper left-hand corner of the battle screen. You accumulate points by destroying enemy resources with direct hits by your shells, or in some cases by capturing them with your vehicle. Pillbox. 4 shells to destroy, 1,600 points. And a pillbox is like, it's basically a little box with a little guy shooting out of it. Enemy tank, hit with a shell, 1,000 points. Hit with a tank, no points, and destroys both. Hut, 2 shells to destroy, 800 points each hit. Enemy Jeep, hit with a shell, 4,000 points. Hit with a tank, it destroys both, but you get 1,000 points. And the Law Infantry, so that's just a dude. Hit with a tank, 800 points. Hit with a shell, 1,600 points. And by the way, when they say hit with a tank, they basically mean you run over him. Fuel and ammo. Your tank comes equipped with 50 rounds of ammo, a full tank of gas, and the ability to move in any of the 8 directions. Zero in on your targets by aligning your cannon, choosing the appropriate range and energy level, and letting fly. Your battle screen tracks your progress with ammo and fuel indicators on the upper right and an energy firing level, which you set yourself on the bottom right. The left button on your control stick sets your range, and the right button fires your shell. So at the bottom of the screen, there's like this energy gauge that you do to basically decide how far your shot's going to shoot. And what I found is you want it either on like the first or second, because any longer than that, and it's going to fly across the screen and probably not hit anything. And even though it looks like it touches something, if it's going a long way, it's really going over it. It's like arcing over it, so it'll go right over it and not hit it. And it becomes very difficult to hit with long range. So I would definitely suggest short range shots. You have 7 tanks and a limited supply of fuel and ammo. As you accumulate bonus points, you earn fresh tanks. Because you are deep in enemy territory, you can resupply your current tanks, fuel, and ammo only by capturing enemy supply dumps. These appear as flashing icons on your computer screen range finder. So, by the way, I never have run out of fuel. If you run out of fuel, you just stop, but I never run out of fuel. But then again, I never got past the first level, and I didn't. The ammo you will need, but it lasts. I was never at a time when I needed more ammo. Tank traps have been cleverly camouflaged. You won't know one's there until you're in it. The only way out is to back the way you came, even though the enemy may be closing in on you. Now, I don't know if I encountered this or not. There was times in the game when I was playing and my tank just got stuck, and I thought it was just poor programming. Like it registered that there was a wall there, but there wasn't a wall there. Maybe that was supposed to be considered a tank trap. So maybe a tank trap is code name for we messed up the programming and the hit detection. I'm not sure. Maybe in the second level there is, but as I said, I only was able to get through the first level, not even through the whole level. It's a very tough game. Final offensive. The enemy has been driven back to the treacherous home turf, and like a she-wolf defending its den, they would rather fight to the death than surrender. As the commander of elite division of XT-87 attack vehicles, you must penetrate their defenses and triumph despite the enemy's valiant, suicidal last stand. Actually, you are doing the suicidal mission since it's just one of you, not them. There's tons of them. Your only route is to capture the enemy flags. The enemy flag lies through the most heavily fortified sector. As you advance, the danger and potential of death increases. They're waiting for you with everything you got. The terrain is covered with pillboxes, heavy artillery, and invisible tank traps. Watch out. Enemy tanks and armored vehicles appear from every direction. Suicide squads of infantry equipped wait in ambush, and surprise air attacks threaten your every move. So yeah, there's these air bombs that just pop out of nowhere and try and hit you. And of course, you got the tanks at you and these little guys with basically bazookas. One nice thing about the game is that if you die, you pick up right where you left off. So it's not like water ski where you go back to the beginning. Levels. You must pass through 3 levels of difficulty to achieve your primary target, capturing the enemy flag. As you advance through the devastation and destruction of levels 2 and 3 and near the enemy capital, you will face increasing amounts of firepower. Oh my. Air attacks, artillery barrages, and missile silos will rain death upon you. The enemy has concentrated their forces around their flag, and with their backs against the wall, attacks come with desperate fury. Victory depends on your quick wits, planning, and accuracy. Good luck. Well, you will definitely need it because in the first level, I thought the enemies were all over me, so I can only imagine what that would be like near the end of those levels. Fuel dump, hit with the tank 400 points, hit with the shell 4,000 points. Ammo dump, hit with the tank 400 points, and rearms tank depending on the current level. So in level 1, you'll get 50 shells, 2, you'll get 35, 3, you'll get 25 shells. If you hit with a shell, you get 1,600 points. Missile silo, if you hit with a shell, you get 1,400 points. Building, 6 shells to destroy, 3,000 points. Flag, ends game at the end of level 3. Hit with the tank, 100,000 points. Impervious to shells. If fuel runs out while near the flag, the game ends and no bonus is awarded. That would be awful. Hints, the law infantry come at you with suicidal and insensate zeal. Aim for their feet, otherwise the armor flak jackets may deflect your shells. Yeah, because any guy hit by a tank shell, they can deflect it with their flak jacket. That would be great. Drugged and frenzied, they feel no pain. Oh, so these guys are strung out. Oh my. Watch your fuel indicator closely. If your fuel runs out, your tank is easy pickings. You have minimal amount of fuel and ammo, enough for victory, but with little margin for error. The success of your mission depends on wisely using your resources and seizing the enemy supplies when you can. But be quick. The enemies will destroy its own dumps to keep them out of your hands if you give them the chance. That can leave you stranded later on. Make sure you fire your shells with the right amount of range energy, set with the left joystick button in 8 incremental levels, displayed on the bottom right of the battle screen. Overshoot or undershooting an enemy tank or fortification can be a fatal mistake, as well as reducing your effective firepower. And that is that. By the way, did you know that? Did I say this? I don't think I said this in the history. It gives you the address, and Froggo was located in Sunnyvale, California, where Atari was. So obviously they wanted to be close to Atari. Now, graphically speaking, again, the game, I don't think the graphics hurt my eyes as much as Water Ski, but it is kind of bland. I think it looks better than Water Ski. You could tell what everything is, again, what the tank is, but just doesn't excite me. And the music, again, almost, broken record. Or for those of you who don't know what a record is, a skipping MP3. The music, there's a musical ditty at the beginning, just like Water Ski, and the sound effects are very minimal as well. So nothing very impressive there. Rarity-wise, this, according to both sites, is the rarest officially released game on the system. They both get a Rarity 7 on both Digital Press and Atari Age. And Digital Press 7 is the only game that got a 7. At Atari Age, it's the only, well, actually that and Mean 18 Golf got a 7 at Atari Age. There are some other things that are considered rarer, but they're not official releases. All right, let's talk about eBay. Now, on eBay, kind of interesting because it looks like there were some auctions that went up twice. Now, there was a Tank Command Enhanced Edition. Now, this was, I think it was put out by Atari Age. I think Kevin, the guy who does my wonderful cover art for these episodes lately, I think he told me he did this. And the basic fix was the graphics. I think it was the colors was the basic fix. So this, I believe, is an unofficial port. It's not from Froggo themselves. It's, it was a homebrew done later. But two of these sold on eBay, but it's the same seller, same picture. So I'm thinking the first time it was an error. So the first time it sold for $15, and the second time and that was a buy it now, I think. And the second time it sold for $60. I think what happened was there was an accidental buy it now, and then they relisted it for $60. Now, technically speaking on eBay, if a seller sells something for buy it now, even if it's an error, they're supposed to honor the price, but obviously that doesn't always happen. So it sold for $60. It says it's new, but it shows you the box and the cartridge. I don't see a manual. I don't know if it came with a manual, and I don't know if it came shrink wrapped. So there you go, $60 for so again, that's I guess you'd say a homebrew title, not the official one. Okay, now as far as the official one goes, this is the most expensive game that you can buy on the 7800 as far as official releases go. So again, I have another one where it looks like the same copy sold two times. Once for $125, once for $150. Now they said it's new old stock. It's mint in box. I looked at pictures of this. This box is just beat up. It looks terrible. Has lots of marks on it, and there's no shrink wrap. And that kind of, I don't know. Water Ski, the new copy that sold was shrink wrap. So I don't know what's going on with this one, but I probably would have passed if I was a collector. It looks terrible and ugly. Now, a copy of the game and the manual sold for $154. That includes the shipping. That was $150 and $4 for shipping. So that is probably an accurate price. If you want just a cartridge, I'm going to guess it's going to cost you $100, but one hasn't been listed in a while. Some people have been trying to sell complete copies, and they've been asking basically over $250 for them, and it hasn't sold at that price. So, maybe a complete copy would sell for $200, probably more in the range there. On Atari Age, there was only one external review, and it gave it 30%. So very lowly rated. On the High Score Club, Tank Command Atomic Knee Drop has the record with 321,200 points. I did not have this as a kid, obviously. I do have a copy now. I bought it on eBay. I found a lot where it was mixed in with an Atari 7800 system. I made it to buy it now. I probably paid the going rate for the cartridge for the whole lot. Like $150 for everything. It came with some extra games in the system. I was disappointed when I got it because it turns out the guy who owned it was a smoker and didn't say it. So there was there's a slight discoloration in the label, and you could smell the smoke when I opened up the box. but it works and it plays great. So, I got my copy. I'm not going to complain. I got it for a really good price, and a lot of collectors have a hard time just finding this. Now, Froggo games, both these games appeared in Atari magazine. Not a lot. Now, in every issue of the magazine, the Froggo had a half-page ad, and where they advertise their 2,600 games and their 7,800 games. Now, for 2,600, I already told you the titles. They range from they were either $15 or $17. I actually have the prices. So, let's see. Does it say any? I don't see anywhere where it says that you could pay them for it. So it looks like an order form, but without an ability to order. It gives you their address, so I don't know if they're expecting you to send a money order. I don't know if people try that or what. So, kind of curious there, but they told you the prices for this, and they also list the 7,800 games. Now, these are just the titles with a little paragraph description. There's no pictures of the games. It's just a black and white ad. And so they list Tank Command and Water Ski, but they also listed 4 other games as coming attractions that never came out. Those games are called Pyromania, Scorpion Squad, UFO, and Night of the Ninja. And that would have been interesting to see what these games look like. I don't think that any prototypes have been found. I don't know if they even made prototypes. I'm guessing these would have been original titles. All the other 7,800 games were original titles, but they could have been knockoffs. I don't know. So kind of a shame that you don't know what it is. Now, the Water Ski showed up in the first issue of Atari magazine. That got a half-page write-up and a cute little picture of a crocodile sitting at the bottom of a riverbed with bubbles coming out of his mouth, holding some water skis like he just ate the water skier. And then Tank Command showed up in the very final issue of Atari magazine with another half-page write-up. So they did get some coverages. So again, if the Trammels didn't want them to make games for their system, why would they take their money for the ads? It seems like a very weird situation. It would be fascinating to talk to the person who ran Froggo Games. I think that would be really interesting, but I don't know if we'll ever know who that person was for sure. So there you go. That is Tank Command and Water Ski. Voice is still down, so I guess I have to do this part. Now it's time for listener feedback. This is the part of the show where you, the listener, comes to the rescue. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Over at Atari Age, I made a forum post where I asked people what they thought of Water Ski and Tank Command, and I use a system of 4 ratings. The best rating the game can get is a Hall of Fame rating. That means it is a top 5 game on the system. Next up is a solid rating, meaning it's a really good game. Next is a meh, meaning it's not really the worst game ever, but it's just nothing, it doesn't really do anything for you. And then finally, we have a trash rating for the bottom 5 game on the system. And this just goes towards official releases, not homebrews, when I talk about top 5 and bottom 5. So the first person to talk on the forums was Jinx, who said, Water Ski, awesome concept, difficulty way too hard, makes it not much fun to play, so meh. Tank Command has pink backgrounds on a tank game, that's all I can say, so meh rating as well. Save 2600 on Tank Command said, never played the game myself, but judging from online videos, seems like a meh game to me. And he also says that I used to have Water Ski and agree about the difficulty. Could have been a much better game had they improved the level design. Not much fun to play as is for any length of time, so meh. These things said, probably the 2 best Froggo games that they ever put out. And yeah, well, definitely on the 7800. Gambler 172 says, hi, Water Ski is a solid game for me. I just like it. And he has a smiley face, and that's okay. Tank Command is meh for me. The Tank Command hack is better. Greetings, Walter, and greetings to you as well. Sean says, both are solid. Wow, Water Ski takes some time to master the controls, but when you do, it's pretty good. So interesting there. Av1 says, I like the innovation of Water Ski. I never do very well, but I still enjoy the game. And Tank Command seems to be moderately fun for me. I've had these games for around 23 or 24 years. Very cool. Soul Blazer, Greg from the SNES podcast said, so I put some time this weekend on both these games. I had avoided them when playing 7800 games via emulation in the past because I knew how horrible Froggo games were for the 2600. Water Ski. Meh game for me. I was surprised at this one for being better than I expected. The control scheme is unique and it works well once you get a hang of it, and it does require some practice. Yes, it does. The graphics are decent, the sound effects are well done, and it's a very challenging game. Yeah, definitely. However, I found it too easy to make a simple mistake and crash and then have to restart at the start of the level, and no continues is not good either. No music either, which encourages you to play your own. It's not a terrible game, but it's not great either, and I don't think I'll be returning to this one. A few tweaks, such as turning down the difficulty level or not forcing you to restart at the level each time, I would have put this in a solid ranking. And I think I agree with you. If it wasn't for the easy crashes, or maybe if they just allowed you to start right where you crashed, that would have probably improved it for me. Tank Command, Greg says, is a trash game for me. The opening sounds are terrible. The colors used are horrible. It badly needs some music playing during the game, and it seems to take way too many hits to be able to destroy the bunkers. The graphics are decent enough, but the colors are limited and looked washed out, and the palette is not very pleasing to the eye. I know it's realistic to have a limited ammo and fuel supply, but you burn through both too fast, and you should be able to rotate the turret of the tank independently of the tank like in a real tank. Instead, you're forced to get at a firing angle to blast targets, which wastes both fuel and time. The firing range of your shots is terrible, and then finally, when you run out of energy, which is going to happen, you're forced to just sit there and wait for something to kill you. One time I had to wait 3 minutes for something to decide to come along and blast me. Finally, collision detection is wonky at best. Awful game for collectors only. Very interesting, because I never ran out of energy myself, so I wonder if he got farther than I did, maybe on the second level or something. Okay, Trevor says water ski. Boasting pretty impressive graphics, but on a poorly selected color scheme, the game's control may take some time getting used to. A higher degree of difficulty with no option for an easier setting may have been a huge discouragement. Once you get the hang of the controls and learn the nuances of navigating through the various obstacles, the game does become more appealing. However, even with the improved color palette, and he's talking about the enhanced edition, the lack of in-game background music coupled with the overall difficulty learning curve makes it meh for me. Tank Command, not as graphically impressive as Water Ski, and even poor color palette choice leave this one as an eyesore from the start. Controls are simple and straightforward, however the gameplay feels incomplete. Just like its water sibling, no in-game background music. While an improved color palette helps this one, it still doesn't impress graphically. Cheap deaths and higher difficulty may be welcome challenge for some, but for most, it makes it an even less inviting. This too ranks a meh with a strong lean towards trash. Very interesting as well. And over on Facebook, I got one response. Brian said that Water Ski and Take Command are both meh games. So it seems like most people are giving it the meh rating. Okay, I did get some email responses from Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. That's Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. If you send me a response through that, you get entered into a contest to win a cartridge from me. I'll ship it anywhere in the U.S. if your name gets drawn, and I might be doing a drawing after the next show. Anyways, let's go on. This is from Steve. Hi Phil, here's my early feedback for Water Ski, and now it's not early anymore. The game is frustratingly hard. Never having played this game before, it's a very recent purchase. It took me multiple tries just to get the hang of the control scheme. I like that you're able to control the boat and skier independently, but I don't like that you are unable to slow down the boat. After playing the game with a standard Pro-Line controller, I switched to the joypad, and that seemed to help my gameplay. I'm able to complete the first level, but cannot get past the second. Maybe it's just me, but the game seems to really speed up in level 2. I can't imagine how much faster it would be in level 3, and it's not just you. I could get to level 2, and that was it. Although this game is difficult, I found myself wanting to play it again and again. I could do without the opening song. I still hear it in my head, but I do like the graphics and control scheme. I'll continue to water ski just to see if I can make it to level 3. My rating for the game is a solid, so very interesting there. And as always, thank you for providing the podcast. And that, of course, is from Steve, and you're totally welcome. Thank you for listening. Got an email from Faro who says, okay, so Karateka is not a Hall of Fame game. I'll change it to a solid LOL. I'm glad I make you laugh. Just trying to have a good time. I really appreciate the time you take to make this podcast. Thank you, Faro, and thank you for sending in your emails. Even if you go crazy and give Karateka a Hall of Fame rating, that's fine with me. Got an email from Kevin. He is the one who does my wonderful artwork that is now being attached to the podcast. The first one went up with episode 10, and I'm going to do the same with this one. So thank you, Kevin. And he's also the guy who did the improved versions of these games. I believe those were the ones available on Atari Age. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. Okay, so for Tank Command, he says, this is the one game missing from my collection. I finished my otherwise complete collection in the mid-90s and left this one out because I heard it was PAL only. By the time I realized that it was NTSC, copies were also available. The price on eBay had significantly increased, putting it well beyond what I considered reasonable. And that was just several years ago, he says. Besides the funky colors, it's a pretty fun game, so a few years ago I decided to do something about these colors. After changing the game colors and the graphics on the title screen, I mostly lost any remaining interest in buying an original copy. However, I was recently tempted until seeing the prices on eBay are higher than ever. Yes, they are. I would rate this game a solid. The graphics are decent, the gameplay is fun. It's challenging without seeming too unfair. I can routinely get partway through the third level. That's amazing. But I have never beaten it without save states or cheating. All right, well, I've only played on my system. I can't even get through the first level, so you got my respect there for getting to the third. Water ski. I first got water skiing new in 1994 from Video 61. I still have the receipt. I think that's really cool when you have the receipt. Along with a few other 7800 games which completed my collection except for Tank Command. I was impressed with the graphics, but a bit deterred by the difficulty. I was never able to get much past the first level until recent years when I was editing the color and graphics. Even now I can't finish the game and have only seen the ending by hacking the ROM for invincibility. This seems to be a pseudo-port of the 1983 Taito arcade game also called Water Ski, which I never heard of until a few years ago. I'll have to look into that. I would rate this a solid as well. It's something different on the system and it's fun to play in short sessions. The difficulty is what keeps me from playing more than a few rounds at a time. Kind regards, Kevin. Yeah, thank you totally, Kevin, for that. Now it's time for a couple audio submissions. The first one is from Lewis, and it's about his first memories of the Atari 7800. Lewis, take it away.
I must have a thing for flopped consoles. I've owned my fair share of them, and they often end up being some of my most played systems. For example, my first 3D console was a Saturn, followed by a Dreamcast. The first portable system I owned was the Lynx, and I still play my Neo Geo Pocket. Yes, the same Neo Geo Pocket which I remember lasting less than a year in the US market before literally being recalled due to poor sales. I still play all these systems, actually, and they're home to some of my favorite games. And as I'm recording this, I'm anxiously awaiting an Atari Jaguar that a friend is fixing up for me. Anyway, it was while I was shopping for an Odyssey 2 that I ended up driving home with an Atari 7800 instead. It was a couple years ago at a store in San Jose, California. Yep, a couple years ago. Although I grew up with an Atari 2600, I never had a 7800. So anyway, I walked in and there it was. Up to a point, I'd only briefly considered getting a 7800. Truth be told, I didn't know a lot about that system at the time. I remembered a couple of ads in Game Player's magazine for games such as Ikari Warriors, Commando, or Alien Brigade. But I enjoyed my Atari 2600 a lot. Besides, 7800s aren't very common. I'd be lucky to see one for sale again outside of eBay, so I took the plunge. I also bought a couple games with the system, of course, and if I recall correctly, those were Pole Position 2 and Food Fight. You gotta have the pack-in. I also bought several titles complete in box from somebody at the Atari Age forums. Now, at first I have to admit I was a little bit disappointed with the system. Pole Position 2 was a bit more jerky than comparable games on other 8-bit systems, and although I adore Food Fight, I was let down by the accuracy of other ports such as Galaga, Donkey Kong, and Karateka. And let's not mention the controllers, or the sound, or that some of my carts barely fit into the weirdly molded cart slot. I mean, you really have to jam them in there sometimes. What's up with that? But, the more games I collect for the system, the more I find titles that make that system absolutely worth owning. I mean, aside from Food Fight. For example, the versions of Joust and Robotron are among the best on any platform, if not the best. Asteroids and Centipede are excellent as well, due in part to their shared score cooperative mode, similar to the two-player mode in 2600 Space Invaders. I believe these are the only two-player ports of those games, and that specific style of co-op play is really uncommon as well. The only other game I can think of which shares score or lives besides those three is Cosmo Gang, which, if you like Galaga, I really think you should check that out. It's pretty great. Then there's Ball Blazer, which is just brilliant. And the 7800 version is one of the best versions of the game, clobbering both the Commodore 64 and NES editions. And I can't forget Commando. Although it's a bit late as Commando ports go, it's a good one, with some features exclusive to that version. I have to say, Commando was one reason I wanted a 7800 to begin with, and it did not disappoint. I could go on. Motorpsycho, Ace of Aces, Mr. Dig Dog. I almost said Mr. Driller. Did you know that Mr. Driller is the successor to Dig Dug? I didn't know that until recently. It's kind of a cool little bit of trivia. Anyway, I could go on. I really dig this system, and being compatible with my 2600 collection is just icing on the cake. The only downside from a retro collecting perspective is that some of the games such as Commando or Ninja Golf are getting really pricey, but there are plenty of good cheap ones out there to balance that out. Seriously, Food Fight is easily one of the best arena shooters ever made, and it's like $5. How cool is that?
Thanks, Lewis. That was really great. Really appreciated that audio submission. I like your honesty that at first you weren't impressed, but then you got into it. And like you, and maybe this is a common thread among Atari 7800 owners, I too tend to gravitate towards obscure systems. And it's almost like I had this knack for picking the second or third place system when I picked a system. I already mentioned at the beginning to show some of the systems I owned, like a TurboGrafx 16 for a little while. I did own an Atari Lynx later on. I didn't get it right away. I got it when they were marked down to $50. I bought it straight from Atari. I mail ordered it. What else did I? Oh, I had a Game.com. I bought a Game.com when it was on clearance. I had the e-reader for the Nintendo Game Boy Advance at one point. I still have it. That's a really kind of obscure thing. And in college, I actually bought a Jaguar when I think KB was clearancing them, and bought a Jaguar CD off of eBay in the box. And that's the one thing I regret selling the most, is when I sold my Jaguar and Jaguar CD, they were all in the box. I had a great selection of games, and the value on those things have really risen in recent years. So I kind of kick myself. That's like probably my greatest regret as far as things I have sold. So yeah, definitely appreciate that submission. Agree with you about the co-op modes on some of the games. I really dig when games have co-op modes, especially when they're just not, either alternating turns or each have your own score. When they do something different, I like that. And then you talked about if I knew about Mr. Driller being like Dig Dug, the follow-up. Well, yeah, I talked about this, I believe, in episode 4 when I covered Dig Dug. But just in case for those who missed it, Mr. Driller, I believe, is the son of Dig Dug and had his own games. And his wife, I forget her name, but she starred in her own arcade game over in Japan. I think it might have been ported limitedly to North America, but it was in Japan. So Dig Dug features one of the first broken families in video game history, because you had Dig Dug and his wife getting together, and then they got a divorce, but the son went on in games. And I think Dig Dug, the character, still appears in some of the Mr. Driller sequels on the DS, I think. I haven't played it, but I'm just going off of memory what I said in that episode. So yeah, and you know what? Yeah, some of the games like Tank Command the price is going up. But overall, I think the Atari 7800 is a pretty cheap system to collect for, especially if you're a completionist. If you're trying to collect every system for a game, with about 60 titles, that's really not too bad. That's really not bad at all. I mean, try doing that for a Nintendo, you'd be spending a ton of money there, or even a Sega Master System. So thanks again, Lewis. And now it's time for that one guy who needs to get his own podcast, and that is Shinto. So let's see what Shinto has to say in today's edition of Shinto Says.
One of my favorite places to go as a kid was Lionel Play World. It was clear on the other side of town, so we didn't get to go there very often, but this toy store had a big wall covered in pegboard that was absolutely filled with Atari games, 2600 and 7800 at least. I'm sure there were NES and Master System games in the vicinity as well. It was that time, but I had Atari Tunnel Vision. I was much smaller then, of course, so it probably was not all that big, but as a kid, it was glorious. I remember seeing these two Froggo games there. We kind of had to do a double take because they didn't look like Atari 7800 games. The boxes had more of a 2600 look to them, but very clearly had 7800 written on the front. We weren't quite sure what to make of them, but we knew one thing: they were out of our price range. I want to say they were $40 each, but I could be wrong. That was a long time ago. Too rich for our blood at that point anyway, so on the pegboard they remained. Instead, we bought an Atari 2600 game. I think it was either Venture or Robot Tank, which was much cheaper, around $10 to $20 if memory serves. So I tried these two games out in an emulator yesterday. I had never actually played them before. The first one I tried was Tank Command. What I really like about this game, and this is going to sound weird because it's more of a defect than a feature, but when you lose a tank, you have a single broken tank animation. Well, animation isn't the right word because there's no animation at all. You just sit there with your broken tank for a few seconds before you can start moving again. And this reminded me a lot of Street Racer for the Atari 2600, a game that I remember quite fondly. So every time my tank was hit, I would hear in my head, and it actually made me laugh out loud. I didn't much care for the range energy level mechanic, where you set the amount of power behind your shells. The game seemed a bit too fast-paced to be worrying about that sort of thing, so I ended up just leaving it somewhere in the middle and trying to position my tank depending on where I wanted the shells to land. This game is tough. I didn't get very far, though. I only put about 10 minutes into it. My rating is going to be meh. It feels kind of like an Atari 2600 game in terms of gameplay once you take the range energy mechanic out. And the color palette is pretty harsh. It does have a couple good things going for it, though. First is the sound, even if that is only in my head. And the second is that the manual uses the word insensate, which I'll need to find a way to work into my vocabulary. I kind of liked water ski. The animation was impressive. It was nice and smooth, and the control scheme with the left and right buttons moving the skier, I think that was a good idea, and it works quite well once you get the hang of it. Unfortunately, it's hard to get the hang of it because the water is so littered with hazards that it can capsize your boat with the slightest tap. I think this would have been a lot more fun if things had been spaced out farther so that you could go for speed and points rather than crash avoidance and getting good use out of your life jackets. Just imagine barreling through the course with insensate glee trying to hit the ramps here and there. I think that would have made for a better game. As it is, though, it's not a bad game. It's a bit too frustrating for me to consider solid, so this too is going to have to fall into the meh category. Not quite as meh as Tank Command, but in the same general area. These games are pretty rare and therefore valuable, so I have to ask, did I make the right decision back in the late 80s by leaving these on the pegboard there at Lionel Playworld? I had a lot more time then, certainly, so I could have persisted and gotten good at these two games. But I didn't have the money and still had a lot of fun with Venture or Robot Tank or whatever it was I bought at that time. So I'm good. I may never actually own Tank Command or Water Ski, but I'm okay with that.
Insensate. Lacking sense or understanding. Lacking animate awareness or sensation. Lacking human feeling. Such as, the law infantry come at you with suicidal, insensate zeal. Thanks, Shinto. I read the manual. When you said insensate, I didn't remember saying it, so I probably slaughtered it or did something wrong to it. I don't know what I did, but hey, you helped us learn today, and that's one to grow on. And by the way, I've seen price tags from Lionel, and I've been a little envious that I never saw this store. I don't know if they just didn't have one around me in the Midwest or what, but I've seen cheap, when I bought some stuff off eBay, I've seen cheap games with cheap Lionel stickers on them. I just imagine what it would have been like to been in, like, what is this Lionel store? Is this a train store, like Lionel Trains or whatever? So I'm glad you brought that up. That was very cool. So let's see. I think that wraps up feedback. Remember, you can send yours to Atari 7800 Game by Game Podcast at AOL.com. You can send it on the system itself. Any memories you've had on games previously covered or any future games as well. So let's see. Speaking of future games, let's see what I'm going to look at. Episode 12 is going to cover touchdown football and one-on-one basketball. That'll be next. Then 13 will be summer games, How Timely, and Super Huey. And episode 14 will be Impossible Mission, and it definitely is impossible in real sports baseball. Let me wrap up by just sharing with you guys my thoughts on Water Ski and Tank Command. I think in the manual somewhere it says you get 4 lives, you actually get 7. that should be a warning to me. And I realize this when the first game I reviewed on the No Swear Gamer was Bubsy, and they give you 9 lives, which makes sense because you're a cat. But when a game gives you lots of lives, it usually is because you are going to die a lot. And that happens in Tank Command. So Tank Command was interesting. I do not like the Energizer mechanic. I agree. I wish you could just shoot straight ahead and whatever it connects with. Would have been cool if you could have rotated your tank as well, but oh well. But overall, I'd say that this is a meh game. Definitely not worth the going rate price. It's definitely a for collector only kind of deal there. But yeah, I appreciate what they were trying to do with it, but it just was way too hard. I think if they made it a little simpler, I think it would have been a lot better. Water ski, I totally appreciate the controls. I think they're very original. And I like the fact that there's a water skiing game. I think that's original too. But again, it's just way too hard. And I'm going to give that a meh as well. And I think that's generally kind of the vibe I got. So, as a community, I say we're going to rate both these games meh. But which one do I prefer? I'm going to go against the grain. A lot of people prefer water ski, but I think I like Take Command a little more. And I think that's just because I like to blow things up. So I think I just had more fun blowing things up than I did trying to operate 2 things at the same time. As far as operating your boat and your water skier. Speaking of which, don't forget to check out my show, The No Swear Gamer, on YouTube. I totally appreciate that. I recently posted a lot of reviews related to Choplifter. I posted a Sega Master System review of Choplifter. I posted the glitch version of the 7800 version of Choplifter. If you get the wrong cartridge in the wrong system and it glitches out, I'm going to be posting a 7800 review of that really soon as well. And I even posted a review of Raid on Bungling Bay for the NES, which is related to Choplifter. It's in the same universe as Choplifter. Both of them, you're fighting against the Bungling Empire. And it was also Will Wright's first game. Will Wright is the guy who created The Sims and SimCity and other such games as that. So be sure to check that out on YouTube. So I think that pretty much wraps up everything. So remember, guys, games are fun, but always keep first things first. Voice, hey, you're looking better. Is everything okay?
Phil, I had a nightmare. I was working on the Super Nintendo podcast with Greg. It was so scary. I am so sorry for being disgruntled at times. I have a new appreciation for life. I am so grateful to be here. Please join us on the next wonderful episode of the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast. We are a part of the amazing Retro Junkies network. You all come back now, you hear?
Find your pristine Super Nintendo copy of that Mr. Dig Dug wannabe, open that bad boy up, take the cartridge out, get a nice shiny new Dig Dug for the Atari 7800 cartridge, and slip that boy back in. The day that you realize that Dig Dug is far superior to that other game will be the greatest day in your gaming life. Back in. The